more focus. That's what he said. Right? I thought it was a great movie line. In fact, it was one of the best movie lines ever. But it's also a life lesson, and it's a leadership lesson, and it's a camera lesson. See, this camera doesn't do so good with that focus when I move too fast. When I get too close, it's set to autofocus, but it doesn't follow me quite as well. Maybe you've experienced that in your leadership. That's what I want to talk about today. Stay tuned.
The Story Power Method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with Story Power. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
Your focus needs more focus. Now, let me say that another way. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and sometimes leadership and production are very much alike. You think you're paying close attention, and then no, you're not. You miss something. It's amazing when you look through a camera lens what you see. Recently, we filmed an event in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And while we were setting up the cameras and running the cables and figuring out where we were going to be able to position lights and cameras to actually be able to see the stage, I watched someone coach the people on the stage that this is your sweet spot. This is where you'll be closest to the audience. Make sure you talk to them here. Now, at the time, the tables hadn't even been set up completely. They weren't exactly sure where the audience was going to be. And they had no idea where the cameras were going to be because I hadn't finished putting them all in place yet. But I was able to look from the camera's eye, from the camera's angle at the stage and say, well, if I put a camera here, I have this giant thing like leaves on a tree that make it impossible to see, this giant column that's 2 feet square and goes from the floor to the ceiling. There's no way I can shoot through it or around it. And I can't put a camera in front of it because then it would only be 15 inches from the stage, which wouldn't give you much of a shot. And nobody can then walk in front of it because that takes up all the space between the stage and the column. So the only way to shoot is to shoot around it from somewhere else and try to keep it out of the line of sight. The challenge was the sweet spot as defined on the stage could only be seen by the column. See, the challenge we have sometimes is we only look through the lens that we have, the experience that we have. We don't think about the emotional lenses of all of our audience, the people that we serve, our customers. And what happens as a result is when we give decisions, when we make recommendations, solutions, prognosis, diagnosis, we have a very limited scope. If you ask a doctor, what do I have to do to feel better? That question is as ambiguous as it gets, and there really is no answer. Oh, well, what's wrong with you? Well, I hurt. Well, where do you hurt? All over. I mean, like your skin or your bones or your muscles? Or do you mean like gut issues? Or do you mean like you're tired all the time? But what do you mean you hurt all over? What does that mean? Is it emotional? Is it physical? If you ask Dr. Song, the answer is yes. Because if you have emotional stress, that leads to inflammation. And too much inflammation leads to autoimmune disorders. And autoimmune disorders lead to things like childhood rheumatoid arthritis. What? Yeah, and other tendencies. And they can all be exacerbated by stress, which can be caused by social media and video games. Who knew? Childhood obesity related to video games. Could be, yeah. But see, when we only look through one lens, our perspective, our thoughts, our experiences, our BS, our belief systems, what we realize is that the way other people see the world and the way we see the world isn't always the same. I mean, right now there are 4 camera angles pointed at me. We have 1 and 2 right next to each other. One is a tight shot, one is a narrow shot. We have 3 way up here that's like up in the sky, and then we have 4 over here that shoots over the shoulder. And I like to walk to that one because I can walk right up to it and I can talk right to the camera, and it's almost like I'm looking you right in the eye. I could poke you right in the nose that way. But see, that camera is positioned there. It's aimed that way. It's set in that perspective. In the same way that if you're in leadership, you might be a chief executive officer, which means you kind of have to be in charge of everything. You might be a chief technologies officer, like we talked about in the last episode, where you have a certain set of responsibilities. You see the world through the technology world. Everything you see in the job is about technology. Maybe you're a CFO, you're the chief financial officer, and everything you see is through the lens of dollars. Maybe you're the chief marketing officer and everything you see is through the lens of promotion. And sometimes the CFO and the CMO, they don't get along so well because one wants to spend a lot of money and the other one's trying to figure out how to save it. And sometimes the CTO is like, you know, I'm agnostic to both of your arguments. I just know if our technology doesn't work, we produce nothing, we have no income. So, you know, we can argue about this all day long. And then you got the COO who's got to kind of be in charge of all of that, and the human resources part, and then maybe you got a CHRO. So all of these chiefs have their own little teams, their own little departments. They also have their own little silos of thinking. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, you have another problem, and that is you are all of the above. Your lens, the lens you look through, has to be both micro and macro at the same time. It's got to be able to zoom all the way in and see everything from the big picture. You don't have the luxury that the leader does when they have 7 different departments. And they can say, well, that's not my department, that's so-and-so. As an entrepreneur, we've got a retreat coming up next week. And as an entrepreneur, guess who makes the slide deck? Guess who converts that slide deck to the manual? Guess who is responsible for designing the sales sheets, the sales copy, and putting all the actual things that you might purchase at this event together? And guess who actually has to stand at the front of the room and present it? Now, I'm not saying I don't have a team. I have a team of 4 or 5 people that are helping me put it all together. And I'll be honest with you, if it was left up to me, there would be no fruit tray. I don't have time for that. If it was left up to me, nobody would eat lunch or breakfast. They wouldn't have any place to sleep. I'd be like, show up, I'm going to teach. That'd be the end of it. Fortunately, I have a team, and they don't look through the same lens that I do. I think one of the biggest failures of leaders is that we forget. Andy Griffith was right. You got to get that little shot where you're just looking through it to say, what would they see on TV? And if you look through the lens that way, I mean, if I were to take one of the cameras and pull it off the tripod and move it around the room, you would see a big room that looks like it's filled with equipment, like a storage room. And to a lot of people, that's exactly what our studio looks like. But the set is designed. This space that I'm standing is designed. Knowing where I'm going to be standing, knowing which mic I'm going to be utilizing, knowing where the sound's going to go and where the sound is going to come from, and what kind of things we have to accent and isolate. Also, all of the lights, the ones that are aimed at the top of my head, that are not even in the shot. The ones that are across the room, aimed at me from every direction to make sure there's not deep shadows on either side of my face. All of those things are done with the camera lens and your perspective in mind. And if we missed one of those things, there are 2 or 3 lights that if I just turned off those lights, this would be an entirely different looking set and show. When you're in leadership and you forget that other people's perspective, they're looking at it from another angle. Maybe they see everything from right over here. They've got that earshot, if you will. The way they perceive the world is different than if they're over there. I mean, If I walk over to the two main cameras and I get really close like this, that one and that one, look, two different camera angles. One of them sees all the way down here and the other one just sees my neck. Why is that? Well, it's perspective. See, different shot from up there and from over here too. And when you're in leadership, you've got to respect that. You've got to understand that not everybody sees the world the way that you see it. It would be nice if they did, but it would also lead to greater failure. You would feel better about yourself if everybody saw the world just the way you see the world. And you would fail a lot. Because the one thing this camera can't show you is the people behind the scenes making sure that my mic stays on, making sure that my mic is the right volume, adjusting the knobs and the dials and the colors and the lights, all of the stuff that has to happen literally behind the scene. This is the scene. I'm in it. When you're in leadership, you're in it. But what's happening behind the scenes, if you forget that, if you drop the ball on that, if you lose sight of that, if your perspective doesn't include that, you will fail. Now let me expand that just a little bit, that zoom out, what they call the 50,000 foot view. Again, if you're a CEO, you already know all this stuff. You can turn this off now and just put your feet up, right? Or maybe it's worthwhile to just revisit the idea that there are other people who have a different point of view. And maybe ask yourself, what other points of view have I missed? Who did I not ask? We watched a great movie last night called Pressure. Great movie. And watched two intelligent, educated, well-equipped, well-prepared decision makers disagree. Big disagreement. Big disagreement. And their disagreement, their inability to agree, is the difference in millions of dollars and potentially millions of lives. And literally, the outcome of their eventual almost agreement could literally have changed world history had they decided differently. It was because those in charge above them said, we're not doing anything until you can at least come to an agreement. Now, I don't mean you have to have exactly the same perspective, but there's got to be at least some place where you look from your own perspective at this decision and you give me input so I can make a decision. The ultimate outcome is literally historic. I'm not going to spoil the plan. I want you to go see the movie. Pressure was a great movie. It was worth it. But understanding that even at the highest levels, global type decisions are made from multiple perspectives. And the minute you, as a leader, get myopic and you believe that because I'm in charge, my opinion is the only one that counts. My perspective is the only one that counts. The way that I see it, micro lens or macro lens or fisheye lens. You know, I love the fact that the cameras that we have in this studio, they're the big Panasonic AGC series. Those cameras have a 20x zoom, optical zoom. I can add 2x to that digitally or up to 10x to that digitally, which means I could zoom in 200 times. But there's a space where I just simply get too close to the camera and it can't focus. It doesn't know that I'm there. It can't pay attention to that. And in that moment, if I have to shoot in a space where I've only got about 3 or 4 feet from the camera, I've got GoPros for that. The GoPro has like a 160 angle lens. You go to wide angle lens on that, it's like in that little 2-inch camera lens, it zooms out 400 feet. Now, don't try to shoot from about 75 feet away because you won't know what you're looking at. Even after you go 4K or 6K and you zoom way in, it's still just not right. It's a whole lot better to have the optical digital zoom before you get there. GoPro doesn't do that. But I also would not strap my AGC cameras to the front of my motorcycle and ride down the road. That's what a GoPro is for. Again, I'm pointing at the same thing. The tools, the devices, the perspectives, they all serve a purpose. The difference in perspective in history and education and training, even in temperament. You want to see a drastic difference? Take any book, any phrase, Take any conversation, and my wife and I can take exactly what was said and give you an entirely different thing. Our way of looking at the world, our way of understanding, our way of comprehending, our way of internally dissecting and regurgitating and synthesizing that conversation is different. It's as different as my studio camera versus a GoPro. It just is. And that's a good thing. I have camera lenses that start at 75 millimeter and go up to 300. I know many people have greater zoom lenses than that. I get it. But I can tell you something that I've discovered with that 75 millimeter lens. If you're closer than 10 feet to me, all I can see is your nose hairs. I can't even focus on you. The lens doesn't allow it. And if it's a little bit dark, the aperture doesn't allow a good shot. Not without flashes and lights and all kinds of other accoutrements. Why? Because that's not what it's made for. But I also have a 50, the nifty 50, right? Everybody loves the 50. The beauty of the 50 is it has zero lens distortion. The 50 millimeter lens on the front of a camera sees the world just like the human eye sees the world. So you don't get people with long, tall heads and little round bodies, which you can get with a zoom lens if you're not using it properly. You get no distortion. The lens distortion, the color factors, the pre and post adjustment, the white balance on a camera. We have one camera, I don't know what it is, it seems to have a mind of its own. And I keep, ta-da, a white balance notebook right here. And this white balance is an absolute white. So for some cameras, they see it as perfectly white. And if you switch around to other cameras, you'll see that some of them have an attitude. We white balanced before we started the show. I'll still have to do color correction in post-production. In fact, I used to have a guy that we would see every Sunday. He would walk into the volunteers lounge. And our rule at this particular church was, if you're not dressed like your Sunday best, don't come to volunteer. I mean, it's great to hang out. It's great to be here. We want you to be in church, whether you come in your flip-flops and board shorts or you come in a three-piece suit. We want you here. We want you to be involved. But don't volunteer if you look like you might be homeless. That's not what we're looking for. And this guy showed up in his jeans with his button-down shirt, always untucked. He always looked like maybe he was just about to go mow the yard. Fascinating. And the first couple of times that I saw him, I thought to myself, I wonder why he keeps showing up like that. And then somebody introduced me to him. And I realized he's not just a volunteer, he's a high-paid, highly trained specialist that nobody ever sees except when he comes down for his coffee and donuts. And the reason is he's up in the loft, in the camera area, running live color correction. Meaning when his camera gets an attitude like mine sometimes does, and it's inexplicable. You don't know why it does it. You push all the buttons, you set all the settings, you got them exactly right. And yet in the middle of the event, woohoo, it decides to do something different. And you're like, I don't get it. Why is it doing that? Well, the live color correction guy is the guy who knows how in that interruption between the camera's lens and the outside broadcast to fix it. That's a genius. That's a high-level volunteer. He also got paid very well by a local broadcast company to do that for their television shows. He sat in the studio 8 hours a day, and everything that went out, he color corrected it. That's a different level of expertise than I have. That's a different level of understanding than I have. And that's a great necessity. And you know what? In your leadership, there's probably somebody that you've overlooked who has the ability to color correct your lens, to fix your perspective. If you don't have a coach in your executive lifestyle who at least kind of pokes you and says, I wouldn't do it like that, or have you considered, or wait a minute, where's your white balance? How do you get back to zero? How do you baseline the ideas that you're working around? How do you know they actually work? Have you tested them? Have you had somebody else outside test them? One of the things that I challenge my clients, the Story Power clients that are working on their communication skills, I understand, I'm on your side. Not just because you're paying me, but I wouldn't have taken you on as a client if I didn't think I could be on your side. But part of me being on your side is that I have a positive view of what you do. I believe in you. And I've helped craft a lot of these stories that you're using. meaning I've helped you in the story mining process. I've dug into what they mean and why you tell them and who they're going to move and what the motivation is going to be and what the end result is going to be. And so I have a vested interest in their success, which means I also have an opinion, right or not, about their quality. When you're ready to test those stories, though, you need a white balance. You need some way to take that absolute framework and put it out there and go, this is 0, where am I? Am I on left, am I right? Am I moving in the right direction? Which means, as John Maxwell says about thinking, he says if you've got a new thought and a new idea, and you want to take that idea to market, it's like having a dog. And that dog has to be one that you can take out into public and is not going to bite people. Ever seen Lilo and Stitch? Remember when Stitch first showed up and they're like, is that even a dog? Well, no, he wasn't, but he could pretend to be one. But sometimes your ideas, your stories, the way you communicate, your new business plan, it sounds phenomenal when you're in a vacuum. It sounds incredible when you're surrounded by people who have a vested interest in its success, who all look at it and go, yeah, that would be genius. But until you've poured 100 hours in it, $1 million in it, until you put it out there for other people who might look at it and go, yeah, no, I don't know why I would want to buy that. Until you've run that marketing plan up the flagpole and had people push back on it, you really don't know just how good or bad it is. And so I encourage my students, I want you to take these stories that we've worked on and randomly choose people who couldn't care less and see if they resonate. Take one of those elevator pitches you've been working on, not the product dump, not the product vomit. That's not what I'm talking about. Take one of those stories that goes way beyond the interest-creating remark and demonstrates your expertise in something. Take that story, take it to the bus stop. Try it at the grocery store. Try it at the gas pump on an absolute stranger. Not as a pickup line, not even to try to get a client, but to see if your 30-second, 1 minute, 90-second, 2-minute story can keep their attention. Because I can tell you for a fact, people are so busy and distracted today with the doom scroll, with the I can't pay attention for more than 3 or 4 seconds. You get 3 seconds to get their attention. If your hook doesn't get their attention, the rest of it doesn't matter. Hook, story, offer. If your leadership role can't get people's attention with your new ideas, maybe it's time to put them through another lens. Try another filter. Ask someone who has a different perspective. Throw that idea out there and see how people respond to it. And if they respond negatively or not at all, if they're negative because the way you communicate it doesn't come across, go back to the drawing board. If they don't respond at all, well, that could be either you're pitching the wrong idea to the wrong person or you're pitching a bad idea. Try another person with the same idea. Before you go changing your pitch, changing your idea, changing your business plan, poke a couple of different people with it. Let me tell you this too, from years and years in sales. I've done advertising sales. I've done media sales. I've done product sales, printing, and all kinds of stuff. Some tangible sales and some what they would call abstract sales. It's an emotional buy-in. Almost as bad as selling insurance. I tried that too, didn't go so well. But when you're selling things that people can't put their fingers on and go, solid, it's good. I can test it, I can taste it, I can smell it, I know it works, I can try it out. When you're selling things that are intangible, you're going to get a lot of no's. But you know where the yeses are hiding? The yeses are always hiding in the no's. If you're in leadership and you're not willing to change the lens, change the perspective, move to another angle, change another lighting angle. I mean, I could do this entire podcast teaching, this entire lesson with just one camera and one light. If you've ever heard the phrase, you're not putting me in a good light, I can show you how the angle of the light alone, not the camera moving, not me moving, just someone moving the light around the room, completely changes what you see. That's leadership. And if, as a leader, you don't have the ability or the humility or the willingness to look at it from another angle, you're not going to be right most of the time. Look, my challenge for you is serious and it's real. And that is, you've got to be willing to zoom out, zoom in, the macro look and the micro look. Oh, and by the way, the macro look isn't just zooming way out. Sometimes you've got to have the right kind of lens to get really, really close to the subject and then zoom out. And you get a different thing. If you dolly, if you can move the zoom and move the camera at the same time, you get some really creepy effects. Horror films love it. When the whole background goes blurry and the subject just gets closer and closer and closer, you should try that with your leadership as well. Move yourself a little bit further back and then look deeper in to the people, to the process, to the procedures, to the budget, to the outcomes. And ask yourself, when I change my perspective, when I change my angle, when I change the light, when I change the lens, when I ask someone else, how do you see this? Do I get the same results as when I look at it? And if the answer is no, now you start asking the question, how do we come to agreement on it? Who has to move for us to see this the same way? And if everybody has to see it your way before they agree with you, your focus needs more focus. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, or Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication.